So, what is 108 Koans? Well, 108 Koans was my MFA thesis, and in the time leading up to me having to do my thesis, the work I was doing was just a lot of little things, ephemeral things, performative things. I was even kind of opposed to the idea of documentation, which kind of bites you in the ass when you have to prove that you've been doing anything. But I really liked the idea of creating little interjections into everyday life and things that may go unnoticed, or if they are noticed, aren't necessarily thought of as artwork, but things that people would be actually interacting with as part of everyday activity. So, for example, I was like arranging chairs in certain patterns so that when people went to sit in them, they would move the chairs, and therefore they would be basically collaborators with me in this chair arrangement, or taking all these leaves that have blown into the building and lining them up in a line. And maybe somebody happens to walk by and sees me doing this, and as they walk by, the wind, the act of them walking by kind of blows the leaves away. So I was doing these little performances and little things that are hard to describe, and I was doing some experimental video. I was doing a lot of free sound improvisation, and all kinds of stuff. My work really didn't fit into one particular media. So when it came to figuring out what I would do for my MFA thesis, I was kind of in a bind because it seemed like, oh God, MFA thesis, it needs to be this big, grand thing. And I was having a hard time figuring out what that would be. I need to like prove my mastery of a certain media or something like that. I thought maybe I could do like a social practice thing. I really like working with kids, so I thought maybe I could do something along those lines. But I was kind of stuck, and in talking to my thesis chair, who was Rob Spar, he's a professor in the Department of Cinema and Photography at SIUC, and he teaches new media, generative art, things like that. And Rob is always telling people to make lots of stuff. So whatever idea you have, just make like a bunch of versions of that idea. Just like every day, create a new version of something. And through that repetitive iteration, you discover things about your idea that maybe you hadn't realized, or you discover new threads that you want to follow. So that's basically, Rob was always saying that to everybody. Make a lot of stuff. So through talking to him about my thesis, we decided that, maybe I didn't need to do one giant thing for my thesis. Maybe I could do a lot of little things. And so the question was, okay, like how many little things constitute a thesis? And tossed out the number 100. 100 things. So I think as soon as As soon as we said the number 100, I immediately thought 108, because it's a significant number in Buddhism, and I was really, I really had a really big interest in Buddhism, and at the time was just reading everything I could. I was admittedly what you might call a bookstore Buddhist. Was not practicing, but I was learning as much as I could through books, which admittedly not the best way to learn about Buddhism, but my interest in Buddhism mostly stemmed from the fact that I'm really influenced by John Cage and the various mid-20th century avant-garde artists who were also influenced by Buddhism, particularly this kind of Americanized version of Zen Buddhism that all these artists were incorporating into their work and kind of in their life philosophies. So just by the fact that I'm really influenced by things like Fluxus and John Cage, I guess Buddhism just kind of like seeped into my consciousness, and I was doing a lot of research, and so I just immediately thought of 108. So then the question was, well, 108 what? Since my body of work didn't really fit into a single category, I was really influenced also by Bruce Nauman, who also has a very varied body of work. And Bruce Nauman had this idea that anything an artist does in his or her studio is art. So really early on, I made the decision that whatever I was doing, these 108 different pieces, they could be anything, really anything. And that I didn't want to think too much about, okay, is this good enough? Is this, I didn't want to edit myself. If I had the idea for it, it was in, basically. At that point, it was, okay, I guess I wanted to come up with a term for what all these things are. And I don't remember exactly how I arrived at using the term koans to describe all these different pieces, but I did. And so 108 koans. I had my title, and I had kind of the framework of what I would be doing. A koan is also comes from Buddhism. In Western writing, a lot of the time, a koan is referred to as a puzzle, which is not really the best analogy, because it's not like something that you can solve logically. It's really just it's something for students of Zen to kind of mull over and meditate on as part of their practice. It's particularly relevant to a sect of Zen called Rinzai Zen. Anyway, the koan in Zen Buddhism serves as a tool to just kind of help the student along on their path to enlightenment. So my interpretation of the term koan as it applies to my work is that similarly to a Zen koan, which tries to, is used in a way to help a student kind of awaken something within them. I want to awaken people's awareness of their own potential for creativity, about everyday acts as a potential source of enjoyment of art. I mean, I was trying, as I was recording this video, I'm like walking around trying to, like, it helps me think as I walk, and I just realized I'm doing a cone right now. I'm walking on this garden hose, which is a cone hose walk. So a lot of the cones are things that are repeatable by anyone. And the expression of the cone that you see on the website is not the essence of, like, that particular video of me walking on the hose is not necessarily the piece. The piece is the idea, and the idea that anyone who has a garden hose in their backyard can do the same thing and kind of participate with me in that act, and that we can be so bold to call this a creative act, right? Like Bruce Nauman saying anything the artist does in his studio is art. Well, anything that you do in your house, anything that you do in your backyard, anything you do as part of your everyday experience, you can contextualize that as a performative act, and you can get creative satisfaction out of that. Yeah, so over the next several weeks, I'm going to be delving into each individual cone. I just got out my old notebook where I wrote down all of my ideas for cones. I'm going to be looking through that and be recording probably 10 at a time each week. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching.